The sound erupts, bodies move with striking precision, and every eye turns towards something new, a lifeless monument. Nothing escapes control, doubt is not allowed, every element in that place drives home one demand: obey. The new decree spreads like an unyielding command, absolute, unquestionable. It leaves no room for resistance, demanding a single visible, public, and total response: everyone must bow. And yet, as the crowd bends low, three figures remain still, standing tall. The break is undeniable, the system detects the defiance, and a lethal protocol is set in motion. The response comes without delay, no debate, no trial. The young men are dragged to the place reserved for those who refuse to conform, the place built to erase every trace of opposition. The execution is swift, meant to eliminate the flaw, but something interrupts. Just as the crowd braces for destruction, the unexpected happens. No screams, no ashes. There's movement where there should only be an end. The onlookers can't comprehend it, those in command can't hide it. You won't want to miss the end of this story, when the perfect machine breaks before something no power on earth can contain, and you'll see why the Empire would have preferred this to never be told. They arrive in silence, along with countless others taken captive to serve Babylon. They're welcomed with promises, housed with privileges, surrounded by strange symbols and incantations. But something sets them apart from the very first days, not just their appearance or speech, but the meaning behind another vital element: their names. Hananiah carries the certainty that God gives grace. Mishael speaks with conviction, declaring, "Who is like God?" Azariah is direct, affirming, "God is my help." Three identities with deep roots, each one a built-in confession, a coded statement directly tied to the God of Israel. That's why the change comes quickly and without ceremony. Their names are replaced in the official records, and they're now called Shadrach, which means the one under the command of Aku, Meshach, meaning who is like Aku, and Abednego, whose name means the servant of the god Nebo. Identities invoking deities from the Babylonian pantheon. What might seem at first like a simple administrative adjustment is, in truth, a strategic cut. The action is deliberate, to rewrite identity through a mechanism of spiritual repositioning, severing the link to their origin and imposing dominion. Next, they are enrolled in the elite's intricate training program, a re-education project designed to reshape their minds. Language and diet are altered, customs and laws are replaced. Babylon doesn't just want slaves, it wants capable, loyal advisors. Everything seems to work because the more refined the process, the less noticeable the loss. But for these young men, the absorption is purely technical, never complete. They don't fight the system, but they never legitimize it either. Most young people in the same program embrace it eagerly. They feel honored, aim for positions, absorb and replicate the culture, but not these three. They respond precisely but without attachment. They follow instructions but never connect. There's something in them that doesn't fit, and that draws the attention of the wrong people. Slowly, some notice they maintain a steady conduct. They don't make a scene, but they don't yield either. Their firmness isn't insolent, but it's non-negotiable, and that sets a precedent that cannot be allowed to spread. If they can stand firm, others might believe they can too. So, a new directive is set in motion. Without realizing it, they are being led toward a public, high-profile event that will force them to show their true allegiance before everyone, a trial that will test the limits of the perseverance of those who have never forgotten who they are. The stability of the program begins to crumble when the reports stop making sense. The young men who should have become products of Babylon still hold to postures that cannot be tracked by the court's methods. They're not insubordinate, they're not fanatics, but they're not one of them either, and that alone is enough to trigger a more primitive and more effective protocol. It's not the king who notices first, it's those who move between the shadows and the throne, those who quietly vie for influence, those who understand the weight of a loyalty that will not bend. Court officials begin to move their pieces cautiously. They know the integrity of these three men threatens a structure that tolerates no exceptions. This is about dominion, and dominion allows no neutral ground. The decree is born here. It's presented as a gesture of full honor to the king, but hidden within is a trap crafted for the least susceptible. A statue is erected, imposing, golden, visible from afar. The wording of the edict is explicit. At the sound of the instruments, all must bow. The command is simple so no one can claim confusion, and for anyone who disobeys, the punishment is immediate, the furnace. No appeal, no exception. The proclamation is met with celebration. A spectacle is meticulously prepared. Musicians will be in position, officials will be watchful, the crowd is expectant. But this will be no ordinary ceremony. It will be a ritual. The sound will mark more than a gesture, it will mark a pact. Bowing will mean more than respect, it will mean acceptance, spiritual submission, a liturgy disguised as homage. The day arrives. Among the masses, everyone bends low. The movement is synchronous, mechanical, and for a moment, everything seems to work. But suddenly, the machine jams. Three in the crowd do not bow. They don't shout, they don't protest, they simply remain standing, and that's enough to expose a flaw in the system. They weren't discovered immediately. Someone saw them, someone reported them, no one knows who, and maybe it doesn't matter. The fact is, the report reaches the king's ears, laced with more than concern. There's resentment, insinuation, and a desire for an exemplary punishment. The king, consumed with rage, demands an explanation. It's no longer about maintaining order, it's personal now. Three men, raised within the system, dare to stand against it. It's more than defiance, it's humiliation, and there's only one possible way to restore control. The decree has already made that clear. The confrontation is inevitable. What began as a general edict now becomes a targeted sentence. Principles are no longer discussed, only loyalty is demanded. And the young Hebrews are about to prove that there are allegiances that will not dissolve, not before the empire, and not before the fire. The throne room, however, was not prepared for this. The decree had been clear, the threat public, and the machinery of the empire turned flawlessly until this moment. But now, before the king, three young men stand unmoved, filled with a conviction no kingdom knows how to fight. The king, holding back a fury that hasn't yet found its outlet, stares at them, trying to identify the flaw in the system he built. The decree is non-negotiable, and breaking it makes the furnace inevitable. And there, before the most powerful ruler on earth, these foreigners stand without hesitation. Nebuchadnezzar tries to regain control. He offers them a chance to back down, more to restore order than out of mercy. When that fails, he turns to threats. Is it true? Do you really refuse to serve my gods and worship my image? I'll give you one last chance. When the music plays, bow, and you'll be free. But if not, you will be thrown into the furnace immediately, and I want to see which god will be able to rescue you from my hand. None of the young men rehearsed an answer, and none tried to bargain. We don't need to defend ourselves. If you throw us into the furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us, and even if he doesn't, we still won't serve your gods or worship your image. The statement slices through the throne room like a blade. It's not an empty challenge, it's a break with fear and intimidation. The king's eyes blaze, his fury erupts, and he rises. The calm that radiated courage now burns with rage. The order is given, heat the furnace 7 times hotter. The execution is formalized, the act is staged to convince the hesitant of the consequences, a message to anyone who might think of following the same path. Soldiers move quickly to carry out the command, but deep inside, the king feels uneasy. He tries to hide it, but he can't erase what he saw. Their eyes are not empty, There's no despair, only a deep, unshakable certainty. Before he can think too long, he condemns them to the flames, but something, in that moment, begins to slip out of his control, and what should have been the end triggers a completely unexpected reaction. The command is loud and harsh: increase the fire. It's not enough to burn, it must erase every trace of disobedience. The furnace must overflow with heat, become an emblem of power and dominion, 7 times hotter, 7 times more relentless. The engineers of death move quickly, feeding the flames with everything they can find. The furnace breathes like a living creature. It crackles, growls, and spits out flames as if it's hungry. Around it, no one can get close. The intense heat devours the very air around it. The atmosphere itself seems to weigh tons. At a safe distance, the king watches. He will make sure this becomes a lesson forever etched into the chronicles of Babylon. The 3 are brought in, bound. They say nothing, they don't beg, they don't hesitate. Everyone there can feel the ground trembling beneath their feet. The soldiers receive the final order and escort the defiant Hebrews toward the opening, but they never make it. The searing fire hits them with such violence that their armor can't withstand the pressure, consuming them with such force that every cell boils uncontrollably, igniting their bodies from the inside out. They collapse instantly. In the next moment, the young men's bodies are swallowed by the flames. The ropes pull them forward with force, the fire engulfs them without mercy, and then, silence. The crowd waits, frozen, for the agonizing next moment. The tortured screams, the crackling of skin peeling away, the stench of burning flesh, the sickening odor in the smoke. But surprisingly, there's no sound, no reaction, only a strange silence that stretches on too long. And then, what they see makes no sense. Inside that blazing inferno, everyone swears they see movement, but that's impossible. Nebuchadnezzar rises, driven by an instinct he can't name, a fear he's never learned to feel. What is he seeing, walking calmly in the midst of the fire? Nebuchadnezzar, now on his feet, no longer has the firmness of an emperor. The once blazing gaze now wavers. Something moves inside the fire. It doesn't run, it doesn't panic, it simply walks. The silence, already suspicious, becomes unbearable. Among the flames, 3 men stroll calmly, but that's not the strangest part. Something that wasn't there seconds ago suddenly appears. A 4th figure, an unexpected presence, one that doesn't belong to this earth. His body doesn't tremble, his skin isn't consumed, his feet don't falter, the radiance surrounding him doesn't reflect the fire, it shines from within. The king blinks several times, leaning forward instinctively. No one questions what he sees, but all share in his astonishment. Wait, how many men did we throw in there? One of the advisors answers, trembling. 3, my lord. Then why do I see 4, unbound, walking in the midst of the fire as if it doesn't exist? And the 4th has the appearance of a son of the gods. The words leave his lips but do not return. The echo spreads among those still watching, frozen. Before them stands a fracture in reality, more than just a breach in the system. Nebuchadnezzar, now pale, no longer behaves like a judge. He is vulnerable, small before what he cannot control. For a moment, there is no king in Babylon, only a man trying to comprehend the unbelievable, wondering if his eyes are betraying him. The fire does not consume, the heat does not overpower. Judgment fails, and there, in the hottest chamber on earth, a glory no empire can name reveals itself without asking permission. The scene hangs suspended, time itself hesitates to move forward. The king realizes there is no Babylonian record of anything like this, no ritual in Babylon to explain what he is witnessing, or what he is about to see. Nebuchadnezzar approaches the furnace with measured steps. His voice is full of emotion, as if searching for meaning in what he sees. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out. Come here. No one can explain what happens next. The three young men step out, walking to the edge as if they were crossing a garden, not the most lethal place in the entire empire. The astonishment silences every comment. The rulers, the satraps, the advisors, they all lean forward for a closer look. No injuries, no blisters, no marks. Their clothes are untouched. Not even the smell of smoke clings to them. And the ropes that bound them? Gone. Not just burned, vanished, as if the fire itself had recognized its limits. What was once a sentence is now a testimony. The empire tried to erase three names, but all it accomplished was to write a chapter no scribe could have invented. It is the complete humiliation of a system that failed to break the unbreakable. The court that once applauded the decree now sits silent before the outcome. Nebuchadnezzar, perplexed, cannot hide the frustration of a man who has watched control slip through his fingers. He no longer commands the narrative. He has lost his grip on the situation. What was meant as punishment has turned into a spectacle, and what was meant to be the end has only amplified the impact. The integrity of the three young men has not only remained intact, it has been displayed, magnified, and made undeniable before all. And as the king struggles to recover from the shock, something within him begins to shift in a completely unexpected direction. The throne that wavered now repositions itself before the only authority it will never be able to subdue. Nebuchadnezzar says nothing more, his lips move, but no sound comes out. He gazes at those men who, moments ago, were surrounded by fire and now stand encircled by a mysterious aura. Something was established there, unseen by the court, yet imprinted in the spiritual atmosphere of all Babylon. The empire that tried to dissolve a troubling faith ended up being invaded by it. A miracle like this doesn't end when the fire goes out. It spreads, it plants seeds, it breaks through deep layers of resistance. Days later, in the palace corridors, nothing seems to have changed, but among the advisors, something begins to circulate in whispers. Some now look at the Hebrews differently. The dignity once ignored is now feared, and, for some, desired. Among those who serve in the temple of Bel, there are those who silently question, and even among the magicians, there are some who revisit ancient prophecies. The event in the blazing furnace didn't convert Babylon, but it struck it in an undeniable way. It planted questions where before there had only been certainties, a kind of questioning that doesn't die, that remains alive for generations. So much so that centuries later, certain men of uncommon wisdom would come from the east, following signs in the heavens. Men who may very well have found traces of this story preserved among forgotten scrolls, recorded in underground accounts. Men who perhaps heard of a fire that doesn't burn and a God who appears in the midst of flames. And what about Nebuchadnezzar? The tyrant returned to his throne, but his gaze is no longer the same. There are cracks in his pride. The seed planted by that miracle will inevitably grow, not at that moment, but in the future. This seed will take form and bring forth a confession no one would expect to hear from the mouth of a pagan king. This is not merely the account of an improbable survival, it's the demonstration of a pattern that repeats throughout the scriptures, for the fire often returns. With Moses, a bush burns without being consumed. With Elijah, fire falls from heaven before the false prophets. And now, 3 young men walk through the furnace and come out unharmed. The message is clear. There is a God who enters the fire and redefines the ending of the story. This appearance in the midst of the flames is more than deliverance, it is an unveiling, a message to the empires of the world and their rulers. No structure can contain the presence that was revealed there, and those who witnessed it, even in secret, were never the same again. The fire burned out, but it did not extinguish what it revealed. The furnace did not consume the bodies, it exposed a glory no throne on earth can stop. The empire that believed it had complete control over everything came face to face with what it could not command. what was meant to be the definitive end became living evidence of something no force can suppress. The faith of those three young men destabilized Babylon's strongest pillar: control through fear. Nebuchadnezzar was forced to acknowledge a kingdom greater than his own, a power that cannot be seduced by gold nor intimidated by fire, and a king whose authority stands far beyond the reach of human supremacy. That fourth man did not appear to prevent the flames, but to walk with his friends in them. This miracle exposed the system's weakness, laid bare the king's limitations, and dismantled the narrative of imperial invincibility. The appearance inside the furnace was not merely a twist in the story, it was a rupture in the collective imagination of absolute rule. Nebuchadnezzar, in his drive to be worshipped as a god, saw his dominion eclipsed by a splendor that could not be contained or manipulated. The story he sought to write became evidence against him, and what was meant to be the ultimate display of his sovereignty ended up revealing his impotence. It was the moment everyone in the empire realized, there are limits even the greatest power on earth cannot cross. Before all present, an invisible force manifested in undeniable form. This was not just about survival, it was about overcoming the impulse to fear, the anguish of suffering, and the dread of loss. Perhaps this is the most challenging truth of the account: the real miracle was not escaping death, but refusing to deny faith in the face of it. The fire that was meant to destroy ended up purifying. Now, look around you and within yourself. In a world that so often demands reverence, enforces obedience, and turns promises into threats, does that same flame still burn in the heart? Perhaps you've faced moments like this, when everything seemed set up to crush you, when all around you looked prepared to consume you, and the pressure was so intense that silence felt like your only refuge, when there seemed to be no way out, and every path appeared to lead to the same furnace, heated 7 times over. Perhaps you've resisted quietly, without fanfare, without an audience, without the hope of immediate deliverance, simply remaining firm, faithful. If we are allowed to imagine, perhaps such a moment is recorded in heaven as one of the most precious ever witnessed, a moment when the eternal kingdom leans in to watch, with admirable attention, a soul that will not bargain away its faith. This story is not an ancient tale, it's present, it's real, it's yours. Because even today, there are furnaces, even today, there are decrees, even today, there are forces that try to silence the truth within us. But also, even today, there is a fourth man, who steps fearlessly into the fire to stand by your side, by the side of a friend. You may not have come out of such a battle unscathed, but you remain standing. Your faithfulness is an invisible, unbreakable line between heaven and earth, and that is your greatest testimony, which is why you must turn it into a bridge builder, an example of victory for others who are also walking through the flames. The best way to do that right now is by giving this video a like. That helps YouTube understand that this content matters and ensures that more stories like this reach you and others. And tell us in the comments, what has been, or is, your furnace? And what kept you standing when everything tried to bring you down? Your story is also part of the message we want to share with more people. And don't stop here. Click the video in the description and on the end screen. The next story might be exactly the one you need to hear today. The fire has limits, and none of them lie outside the control of God's hand. When He steps in on your behalf, the impossible retreats, decrees crumble, and every ending becomes a new beginning.